Welcome to the Retirement Planning Show, your source for financial strategies to help you retire with confidence. Featuring Chip Coughlin of Retirement Income Analysts in Syracuse, New York. Chip is a registered representative, and securities are offered through LPL Financial, member of FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Stratus Wealth Partners Ltd. Retirement Income Analysts and Stratus Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. And now, here are your co-hosts, Matt Halloran and Chip Coughlin.
Hello and welcome to episode number 21 with Chip Coughlin. Today, Chip is going to talk to all of you about the money questions you should be asking your parents. Now, Chip, this is a very important topic because there's so many questions that we should be talking to our parents about. Where'd you get the article, and tell us what we're going to be doing today?
Well, Matt, I found this article, and it was really timely because I was having a conversation with my mother about these issues, and I came across an article from Mary Beth Stoyahan, and it was dated February 15th, 2018. And as I read this, it really resonated with me because of the conversation I was having with my mother at the time. And it's a necessary conversation. I can tell you, subsequent to the conversation, my mother ended up in a nursing home.
Oh.
So the timeliness of the conversation I had with her was tremendous before she went to the nursing home.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into these questions. What do you got for us?
Well, I guess first off, this conversation can be a little awkward because you're talking about money and with your parents. And so you've got to keep the lines of communication open. The more you understand about your parents' financial and retirement plans, the easier it's going to be for you to help them if they need it. And I think that's very, very, very important. But they may be resistant. They may be somewhat secretive. Sometimes parents don't discuss their finances with the children for a number of reasons. They could think, one, it's none of their business. Number two, maybe my situation isn't quite as good as I'd want it to be, and I might be embarrassed. So there's a number of reasons why parents don't discuss their financial situation with their adult children. But it's a great way to try to bridge that gap and ask a few questions, get them started talking, take good notes so that you can be prepared. And I think the preparedness in my situation was very helpful when my mom went to the nursing home and we knew what it was going to be all about. So we know it can be awkward, but it's a conversation everyone should have. And you may need to help them in the future, and that's why you're asking these questions. So how to start the conversation? I would start it in a very general way, telling them that you're concerned about their future and you'd like to know a little bit more about it so that you can assist them in the future if necessary. And, when you're doing the planning with your will, your power of attorney, your durable healthcare proxy, and things like that, these are all questions that should be surfaced so that you're ready, prepared, and able to help them if they reach out to you, or if they can't reach out to you, you're ready to go anyways. So, the first question I asked my mom, and I said, what is your retirement plan? Now, she was already retired, and she's been retired for a while. But when you ask this question, what you're trying to find out is their vision of retirement. How do they see themselves? Where do they see themselves living? And if you go back to, and perhaps I should have had this conversation with both of my parents while my dad was still living, to get his idea of the perfect retirement as well as my mother's. And, sometimes with seniors, the vision of retirement could be just a leisurely extended vacation, or it could be an active, involved situation where they're volunteering, they're active in their church. My mom was active in the hospital, auxiliary, volunteering there on an ongoing basis. So you're trying to find out what their view of retirement is. And perhaps I would say try to assist them in establishing what their retirement is going to look like, the pattern of interaction, who are they going to be with? Because you need an active, involved lifestyle with interaction with other people to feel successful. Otherwise, you may feel very isolated, and that's not what you want for your parents. And I think having these conversations, again, is a good thing. So what is your retirement plan? You could say, when do you want to retire if they're not retired just yet? Mm-hmm. Where do you want to live? you want to stay in the same place? Do you have plans to go to Florida for the winter, as many people do in central New York? Do you want to work? Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to play an active role with the grandchildren? So what you're trying to do is get a sense of what they want to do, when they want to do it, where they'll be located, and things like that.
Hey, Chip, I have a quick question for you. Is this in your experience, is this a one-time sit-down conversation, or is this done over multiple sessions?
Matt, this is an ongoing dialogue, okay? Because I think in smaller amounts, it's probably a little bit more tolerable. And each time you broach this subject, perhaps it should get a little easier, okay? So that you can ask the important questions and not have your parents flinch when you ask those, or, look at you and say, this is none of your business. It is your business if you're there to assist your parents. And again, the genesis of this is to be an asset to your parents, not a financial asset, but an emotional asset, a supportive asset, and a planning asset to help them realize exactly what they want to do. Because I know even with my grandparents, I bet nobody had a talk with them about what they want to do and how they want to do it. And their view of retirement was a great deal different than my parents' view of retirement, which will be different than my view of retirement. So the views on retirement have changed over time, and it's nice to check in and see what the plan is, because without a plan, you're just sitting on the couch. Right. And as you know, if you sit on the couch, you rot away.
Right.
So we want to have that. So again, going back, what is your retirement plan? After a couple sessions, if we want to call it this, think of it as a therapy session. I hope it doesn't come off sounding that way with your parents, but you want to get into some of the more intimate issues, like what will you do for income? What are your sources of income? How are you doing with Social Security? Have you started your Social Security? Have you not? What types of accounts do you have? Where are they located? And then as the conversation gets deeper, you could also ask, do they work with an advisor? How much risk do they have in their portfolio? How are they doing with their taxes and things like that? And you could look at their savings. You could look at their pension. You could look at Social Security or any other governmental benefits. Do they continue to work? There's no right answer. The important thing is really making your way towards a spending plan, or a budget, if you will. And Matt, I tell everybody in the retirement class that I teach that the budget is the backbone to good financial decision making. And, we try to have everybody have a budget, because does it fit in the budget or does it not? Use it for a car. Everyone needs a car. Do you want the Lexus or do you want the Camry? The Camry is much more affordable. It's going to last arguably just as long as the Lexus. So why put so much money into a car that those dollars could be put somewhere else? So we try to look at the value side of the budget and say, okay, what do you value? What's important to you? What are your long-range plans? How is that going to work? So what is the retirement plan? I think is an important question, because you're going to get a sense of how they want to live and if they've got the assets to do so. The next question I would ask is, how will you handle healthcare expenses? As we know, healthcare expenses go up every year, and it's very, very costly once you're retired. Now, you're going to get Medicare Part A, Part B, Part D. What provisions have you made? Do you have healthcare from a former employer? Are you relying on the government to do that? Do you have a Medicare supplement policy to pick up some of the things that Medicare doesn't cover? Typically, from a recent survey that was done, only about 68% of expenses in retirement are covered by Medicare. So who's going to pick up the balance? All right. And really, the healthcare question, don't take it personally. It's very expensive. And the medical bills could eat up very quickly a large chunk of their budget if they don't have the right strategy. So if you're not retired, let's rewind a little bit. If you're not retired, you may look at healthcare expenses like funding your HSA account if you're still working. Figure out what type of government benefits are going to be available when you retire and things like that. So I think that's important. The next question, again, is very important. Do you have your estate plan in place? Again, that's why you need to do this over multiple visits and in a non-threatening way. It's got to be very conversational. But do you have a will? Do you have healthcare directives? Where do you keep your important legal documents? How recently have they been reviewed? In the class that I teach, I ask everybody to review their will. How recently was it done? And is everybody in your will still on your team? Okay, if your executor is your roommate from college and you live in New York and he lives in California now, that's really not an efficient scenario. So perhaps some changes need to take place. But the important legal documents are important because it lays out your parents' wishes should they become incapacitated or pass away. Let's have a plan in place so no one is guessing. And it really takes the stress out of the situation emotionally if there is a plan that can be referenced by other people in the family as well to know the intention of your parents. If you don't have these documents, we tell everybody they should seek an estate planning attorney sooner rather than later. Let's get it done because we don't know what the future is going to hold. You can acknowledge to your parents it would be difficult to go over these things because end-of-life planning is not something people enjoy doing. It's not like planning to go on a vacation where you're real excited. This is planning for the end, and nobody wants to end. So I think that's tough. But getting the estate plan in place is important. It's important for the heirs, not just the person having the conversation, but all the heirs. It's important to corral the assets and see what's where they're located, where the important papers are held. It wouldn't be bad if you have a great relationship with your parents to get copies of everything, copies of all the investment statements, the bank accounts, the will, any trust documents and things like that, so that you have those readily available and you don't have to hunt. And I think that's very important.
Hey, Chip, should you attend those meetings like with estate planning attorneys with your parents? What is your experience with that?
I think that's a great strategy. I'll be honest with you. If your parents trust you, and you show your parents a great deal of respect, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't have you in on that discussion. And again, you're there just to listen. You're not there to influence. So we would want you to be able to go to that meeting, listen to what their concerns are. It'll give you a deeper understanding of the route they're choosing to go on, if you can understand that. And I would take great notes. I would archive these notes because if something happened to your parents in the future, for a greater understanding for your siblings, you could pull these notes out and say, I took these notes when we went to the attorney. Here's the thoughts they were expressing. It's written in the will, but a little deeper understanding may be necessary to determine exactly what someone wants to do. So, do they have any charities that they want to benefit? Don't guess. Write those down. They could be in the will. If they have any people that are outside of the immediate siblings that they've had an important role in their life, they want to benefit them. Again, you're not there to influence, you're there to listen. And I would encourage, family members to go sit down with the attorneys so they understand what the roadmap looks like or the plan so that it can be as efficient as possible and it can be no questions. Did they really think that or did they not? You want to avoid that, okay? One of the things we tell to everybody is we want them to avoid the probate process if possible, as much of their assets to be distributed without going through the probate process. The probate process is a public process. It's there to protect your assets, but there are accounts like retirement plans, IRAs, 401ks, life insurance, annuities, and things like that that can pass outside of your estate because they have a named beneficiary. The rest of it seems to go through the probate estate, and it can tie the proceedings up for a longer period of time. So on some accounts, such as bank CDs, mutual fund accounts, bank accounts, and some brokerage accounts, you can do a transfer on death designation, which is essentially like getting a beneficiary on those accounts. So they go to exactly who you intend them to go to without anything going through the probate process. And again, that's a great part of planning that many people miss. So the probate process can be long, it can be complicated, it can create a lot of stress. As I said, anything that goes through probate becomes public, and a judge is going to make the decision, where this goes, and that may open it up to disputes among the family and things like that. So if we can pass some assets outside of probate, or a majority of the assets outside of probate, that may be a better situation for everybody. All right. As a final question, it could be very open-ended. Will you need my help?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you sit down with your parents, will you need my help? And it's kind of implied by asking that question. You'd almost think that they would accept your help, but not always. But will you need my help? How can I make this easier for you? And, you're expressing that you want to be involved in the process. You don't want to dominate the process, but you want to be involved in the process to carry out their wishes. But if you're working with your parents and you're setting this up completely, I think your parents are going to have better feelings about this process. They will be calm about it. They will be a little bit more relaxed and know that their wishes are going to be carried out as they had planned. I also think it's good for the beneficiaries of the will or of the accounts so that they know things are in place and it's very organized. It's not going to take forever. It can be very efficient. And, everybody gets their needs met. Most importantly, though, this conversation is to keep your parents calm and make them aware of what's out there, that you're willing to help, and their wishes can be met.
Chip, I love the wishes can be met thing. And for those of you who are listening to Chip and thinking to yourself, wow, this is going to be a really difficult conversation, which it can be, if you remember that point there by saying, my goal is to make sure that everything happens just as you want it. If something happens, that a lot of times will lower their resistance. So, Chip, I thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add today?
Well, I will tell you, it's better to plan than have to plan after the fact.
Sure.
All right. And I know with my mom's situation, she had a stroke shortly after we had this conversation. And so she was not able to articulate anything beyond that. So luckily we had this conversation, and she had her will in place. I was helping her with her finances. But, the hardest part was going back to her house after she'd gone to the nursing home and looking for certain documents that I had not been able to find. And it felt like a violation. I'm searching my parents' stuff. I'm searching her drawers, looking for different things. And it was very, very uncomfortable. So a little pre-planning goes a long way to making your parents comfortable, making you comfortable, and really guaranteeing to your parents the outcome that they're looking for. And again, this is their game. Let them be the captain of this ship. You're there to help and support.
And with that, Chip, thank you very much for this episode today.
Very good, Matt. Good being with you.
And if you are concerned about having a conversation like this with your parents, this is the opportunity for you to reach out and talk to somebody like Chip Coughlin and everybody at the Retirement Income Analysts, because Chip has not only done this for himself, but he's also done it for hundreds of other people, having these sorts of conversations to make sure that you're taken care of and your parents are taken care of, toward the end. All of our parents are getting older and we're getting older every day. It's so important to have these powerful conversations. And if you do it in a structured and systematic manner, just like Chip talked about, that changes the whole game. So for Chip Coughlin and everybody at the Retirement Income Analyst, this is Matt Halloran. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe now button below. And that way, every time a new podcast comes out, it'll show up on your listening device. And I will see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Stratos Wealth Partners, a registered investment advisor. Stratos Wealth Partners and Retirement Income Analysts, LLC, are separate entities from LPL Financial. Content in this material is for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.